Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, I have been heavily recommended to watch this video about how Phrolova's cruel symbolism is getting explained. We're all up in the air, I think, after that 2.5 story quest, and this guy has done a lot of research in a lot of different forms of literature to actually break down the significance behind a lot of her motifs, a lot of what's going on, and I think through this, we're going to get a much deeper understanding of her characterization and maybe what the future is going to hold for her. So let's go ahead. It's a bit of a longer video, so we will be speeding it up because I do think the guy talks a little bit slowly. Let's get right on into it.
To be honest, I was never super into the story of Wuthering Waves. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't like the story, because some parts of the story are actually fire, but what I really mean to say is that I, as I'm sure is the same for many of you watching, am a little bit of a story skipper. However, the most...
Okay. I can appreciate the full transparency over here, but I have to say that's one of the most wild things that you can say at the beginning of a 30-minute lore dump. The fact that you skipped like a good portion of the early story. And it's even crazier to say it in the context of Phrolova, when she is a character that played some pretty pivotal roles in that early story and was like a major character that was talked about a lot. Hopefully he'll like have the evidence, the glue, to ease some of the skepticism that I think most people are gonna have hearing that. So let's just keep going.
This recent story to come out with the 2.5 update, and I only realized this after I finished, was the first story where I did not skip a single scene. To put it bluntly, Phrolova's story was absolute fucking cinema.
Oh, so he skipped scenes in almost every other quest. Okay, so this one really did something for him.
Personally, I think that it is one of the, if not the best story I've ever seen presented in a gacha game. And as you can probably tell if you're watching this video, one of the reasons why I liked it so much is the massive amounts of symbolism, motifs, illusions, all of these things, to poetry, to music, to language, that was just everywhere.
He kind of gives me like Marco Meatball vibes, but instead of jizzing himself to music, he's jizzing himself to books.
Story. Suffice to say, Kuro definitely cooked. So today what I thought I'd do is to explain some of these bits of symbolism, so hopefully you can learn something and maybe enjoy the story as much as I did. Spoilers ahead.
Okay. That's a warning for you all as well. But if you haven't played the quest by now, then you're just a tourist, right? So what does it really matter anyways? It's not like you cared. T.S. Eliot is an author. Yeah, I know most of you guys don't go to school. Or if you did, you went during COVID, so you're like a little stupid. Yeah, he's an author.
When I first saw Phrolova's character reveal trailer after a long day of work, I was quite tired, and I wasn't really paying attention, until I saw something that made me start focusing immediately.
There's something about like the black and white footage, which is supposed to like be like all old-timey, and then showing like a fucking anime chibi running on your desktop. There's something poetic about that.
The 936th time. This is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whisper.
Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
Is that the last stanza of one of my favorite poems ever? Yes, it is. Aside from one word, Phrolova's lines in the character trailer, which is repeated later in the story, is a direct quote of the final stanza of T.S. Eliot's 1925 poem, The Hollow Men. And when I saw that, that was a light bulb moment for me. Similar to how Wuthering Waves is set after a period of disaster, being the lament, Eliot wrote many of his poems after the end of World War I, where he felt the world was spiritually dead and in a sort of paralysis.
World War I was a pretty fucked up time. It was so fucked up, the end of World War I, it immediately went into World War II. So that should help describe it for you, just how bad that time of history actually was.
Eliot's The Hollow Men talks about how much he despises that modern people.
Don't tell Tectone about this video. His mind is going to break.
In his post-disaster environment, have no mirth, have no emotion, have no spirituality. And when Phrolova laments on how Rover gave up their memories, she declares that it is these things that are most important, that constitute the spirit of humanity.
Modern post-war people are okay. That describes a lot of the framing of wuwa. Some people do seem like straight up depressed. I feel like Fraxidus as an organization is kind of like this. That's why they're trying to end the world, brother.
Yet, there's a bit of a bitter irony here, because Eliot describes the spiritless and modern people of his poem as hollow men, as straw men. They are people, Spiritless, they are people, illusions who look complete, but on the inside are empty and filled with straw. The paradox of Phrolova's mentality is that the people of her dream world that she desperately tries to restore, the villagers, are exactly just that. They are frequencies, feelings, illusions long past, who have exterior faces and appearances, but are devoid of sustenance. Despite this, a part of Phrolova holds on to this sort of vain hope that these hollow men can be restored, even when Rover claims that it is impossible. Just like how it is impossible to make a figure of straw turn into a living human, Phrolova continues on a sort of eternal journey to try to make an illusion a reality.
One of the big parts of wuwa story writing is the number of references that it does take to existing literature. I think Cindy Marr is like a really good creator that like dives into this sort of stuff. He's made like a lot of references where I think there's like the whole like divinity thing and like elements and like Greek stuff for Raguna or Renacida. Yeah, no, for Raguna specifically. And then like Septimont is all about like Norse mythology. Yeah, so this being a bit more of like a callback to like postmodernist, you know, like poetry, that sort of vibe. Hey, I mean, shit. If it's a vibe, it's a vibe. Some could say it's them not being original, but some could also say it's them doing what works and was well received.
Then how can you claim my goal is unattainable?
Purgatory and Dante's Purgatorio. Okay.
One of the other aspects that Eliot explores in his poem, The Hollow Men, is the realm of Purgatory, a temporary space between death and heaven, where souls undergo purification before truly passing on. In essence, it is a liminal space, a boundary that exists between a person's mortal death and a true afterlife.
I feel like most people know about this one. If you're not aware of what Purgatory is, you actually do need to go to school.
Eliot, for instance, uses Purgatory as a metaphor for describing the Hollow Men, who have spiritually died but are not yet dead. This concept, however, was something that Eliot borrowed from Dante Alighieri's work, The Divine Comedy, where he illustrates this concept in a much more colourful manner. And considering that Renacita is heavily inspired by Renaissance Italy, it was not surprising to me in the slightest that Kuro would make symbolic reference to what is essentially the single most famous piece of literature composed in the Italian language. Dante's Inferno is a poem that documents the poet, so his spiritual journey, from death to heaven. In Part 2, or Purgatorio, Dante describes his journey through Mount Purgatory.
Isn't it appropriate that Kuro has themed so much of wuwa's story behind this whole like Dante's Inferno thing as they're simultaneously releasing the Devil May Cry collaboration with PGR? You want to know what the next timestamp says here, guys? Virgil. Just saying, I feel like to a degree, I don't think you can lie about this. I think the PGR collab actually influenced the wuwa story. The PGR DMC5 collab. Because you want to know how the DMC5 collab starts in PGR? In hell. In hell.
It is an illustration of the existing Catholic concept of purgatory that we discussed previously. And it's important to understand that in this state, he is dead, but not truly dead. And this concept of
dead but not truly dead. Oh, where have I, oh, that surely is not the state that Phrolova's in right now. Wouldn't it be crazy if Phrolova's Dante?
undeath, shall we call it.
And isn't it also interesting that Phrolova has the same color scheme as Dante from Devil May... I think that one's a bit of a stretch, but they actually do have the same exact color scheme. Phrolova and Dante from Devil May Cry.
Is essential to understanding everything about Phrolova's story, because Phrolova herself is a dead man walking. We already know that her forte awoke when she died, and that she's essentially half human, half TD.
Yep.
She is no longer mortal, but halfway to death. Essentially, she is in purgatory. The frequencies of the villages that she holds onto are only empty illusions. They are effectively souls who cannot pass on and are trapped in purgatory. The tacit discords she creates out of the villages are empty shells. They are hollow men who are in a permanent state of undeath. While Dante considers that Purgatory is a temporary step on the way to heaven and the afterlife, Phrolova thinks a little bit differently.
She's trying to keep them in Purgatory because that means that at the very least, they're still kind of existing. I would say at the end of the 2.5 quest, it's almost like she's made her own version of Purgatory, and that's where she's staying, where she's still technically considered alive, but everyone knows that her body's not really there anymore.
In creating a world that, in her words, is a land of serenity, harmony, and perfection, a place that is to never be marred by tragedy.
But the way that she describes it makes it almost sound like what she's making is heaven. Right? I'm probably not the only person that during this part of the quest, most people thought she was trying to create like some sort of like utopia.
Phrolova's goal.
But then when you find out that all of the inhabitants of this utopia are actually still TDs or still like echoes, right? That's where stuff started getting like a little bit weird for me. Is when I found out that all the people in like the land beyond were cosplaying essentially humans.
To make the lost beyond a reality is essentially to make this state of purgatory or undeath eternal. Phrolova's lost beyond would be a space beyond the reach of time, outside of the cycle of life and death, a space frozen in time that would be, as she says, an opus of life that lasts an eternity.
And there's one part about this whole like purgatory thing that I feel like a lot of people haven't dove into, but I'm ready to begin the philosophical discussion right now because I think this is a decent time for it. Isn't there something wrong with this idea that like kids are never gonna grow older? That like that one little like girl child that she was like talking to, that she had a really big bond to, they'll never get older. They're always gonna like stay a kid. The old man is never gonna be older. He's never gonna pass away naturally. The like Triss, the kid, will never be able to like learn what actual loss is. Seeing people grow old, getting older themselves, going through like relationships, blah, 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 like the internal growth process. And is that kind of existence something that's positive too, right? Where you're almost like in a permanent state of stasis as opposed to like naturally developing, or I guess in this case, right, meeting the end that you're supposed to, right? Because this is a state of constance. Like it's constant, never changing. And isn't that, in its own way, something bad? And is that the point of view that Rover had as well? I think that one part of the 2.5 quest that I feel like a lot of people haven't really got into the nitty-gritty of as well is how disjointed the point of views were. We got to see the rhyme and reason for every single action that Phrolova was taking, right? We saw all the backing, all the evidence, all of like the commitment, while with Rover, all we kind of got to see were their reactions in this situation. I feel like we never really got to see like Rover's full thought process when it came to why they would say things like, you don't know the true meaning of life, so on and so forth. And I feel like that's going to be like lines of conversation, like threads that will be followed up in the future. Because a lot of the stuff with Rover, at least, seems to be like whiplash, right? You don't get to see the internal monologue before certain statements are made, when in the past, we typically got a lot of that. And is it being done intentionally? I would say yes. So I think that there is a lot more to this story that we're going to be seeing in future updates.
In the space between physical death and the afterlife, Phrolova has never succeeded in stopping the march of time, of life and death, instead replaying the same scene over and over again.
Yep, in a
trailer. I want you to watch the final lines of Phrolova's Resonator showcase.
Death is near. Death is far. Only in an eternity freed from both life and death can that boundary dissolve.
Which is clearly what she's making, right?
It is her goal, then, to make an eternity free from life and death, a purgatory where she and her loved ones can live forever.
I've been craving to touch you like a light stroke in your face, my dear Every
On the journey up Mount Purgatory, Dante is guided by two figures, the first being the Roman poet Virgil, who represents human reason and wisdom, guiding him through hell and purgatory, and then Beatrice, who takes over near the end of the journey, who represents divine love and judgment. As we established already on how Phrolova links to purgatory, we need
I wonder who's supposed to be who. I feel like this is Fraxidus and Rover.
to quickly also understand the role of Rover in her story, because I think a lot of people tend to downplay how important they were in catalyzing her eventual spiraling and joining the Fraxidius. If we consider Phrolova as a concept that resides in purgatory, between death and the afterlife, and her story as a journey through purgatory, it actually makes a lot of sense that in the two times that Phrolova meets Rover, they fulfill both the role of Virgil and Beatrice. As we know, the past Rover only met Phrolova once, during a concert where they were able to understand the true implications of her music. This was during a time when Phrolova had not wiped their memories, and it would have most likely been any other ordinary day.
I'm sorry, why is her name Land Rover 4x4? They need to change that shit for the next video. They need to change their fucking name. That shit is too retarded to be on screen. I'm sorry.
Their long life. However, for Phrolova, who had been crushed by fate, manipulated, and persecuted, Rover
Like, I can't pay attention when I see that shit pop up, bro. Like, you gotta change that shit. I'm sorry. Just change it back to Rover.
was the first voice in an eternity that understood her experience. In The Lost Beyond, we see her journal, which highlights how important Rover actually was, lamenting what experiences allowed her to understand such despair. In the Rover before the memories were erased, which, for the sake of clarity, we'll
I've always been in the boat of, I can rationalize why she felt this way. I still think she's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs for holding that obsession for so long. And the thing is, right, it's just, when you're designing characters in a story like this, I think it's okay for them to be crazy. I think it's good. And Phrolova is without a doubt fucking insane.
call pre-wipe and post-wipe Rover from now on. Phrolova finds an equal in understanding, and someone who provides her advice from her problems and moving forward. In essence, on Phrolova's journey through purgatory, pre-wipe Rover takes on the role of Virgil, guiding Dante through despair and hell. We can see this parallel when we see the impact that pre-wipe Rover's words have on Phrolova going forward, where she wants to know more about Rover and her insight. However, all things must come to an end. In Purgatorio, Dante must part with Virgil, as he is a pagan and cannot enter heaven, just like how Phrolova cannot meet with Rover, as they have their memories wiped. In both these situations, factors outside of the character's control forcefully terminate their friendship.
The lament and memory wipes, and then not believing in God for the other one.
In this, however, we see a sort of dichotomy, where Rover feels that their single-time meeting with Phrolova was just another day, while for Phrolova it was a more so life-altering experience, which, from her journals we can tell, turned from salvation to betrayal, as Rover never returned to fulfill their promise.
I waited for a long time. I won't wait anymore.
While pre-wipe Rover takes on the role of Virgil, as you can probably guess, post-wipe Rover, or the version we actually play in the game, takes on the role of Beatrice. Both post-wipe Rover and Beatrice appear at the end of the journey of Purgatory. In Dante's Divine Comedy, we see Beatrice guiding him near the peak of the mountain, while in Phrolova's story, we see post-wipe Rover meeting her again, finally near the end of her very, very long life. Here, Rover technically fulfills their promise to see Phrolova again, but now they are strangers.
I mean, true, right? I don't think a lot of people realize Rover never broke no promises here. Hey, it took a long time. Took a couple of factory resets, but we came back, brother. Hey, why you mad?
Considering that Phrolova is essentially physically immortal, and that one's resonance abilities are tied to their emotions, we can conclude that Phrolova can actually only die if she herself is willing to do so. And tying things together, you can see how in the story of Update 2.5, instead of offering advice as a friend like Virgil, Rover is now the divine figure of Beatrice, who intends to end Phrolova's overstayed existence in Purgatory.
Actually not wrong. I think one of the lines in the story quest that a lot of people aren't like fully registering sometimes is the idea that Phrolova actually wanted to be killed by Rover. That one of the things that she literally says is, all I need now is a sharpened blade, right before she like intentionally aggroes Rover and gets her to kill him. Or gets him to kill her. Or gets them to kill her, depending on your rover gender. She wanted it. She wanted that to happen, and it was, I think, heavily foreshadowed, but some people, my headcanon is that they were simping so hard for the unit that they just didn't read into what that foreshadowing was.
Purgatory. In the final death scene where Rover stabs her through the heart, which she is doing quite a lot of.
And I think this is what people don't notice too.
Final death scene where
look at this.
Rover.
Look at what Rover's aiming for. Is Rover aiming for her or the gemstone? Or does she just decide to place the gemstone right over her heart or her weak spot? And then she proceeds to move the gem while the sword is in flight and reveal where I assume is her Achilles heel. She probably knows the one spot on her body where she knows she'll die if she gets hit. And she lines up the bait right for it. Her heart is on the left. I know. I'm saying this is probably like her Achilles heel area. I don't know why else she would be holding it there.
So through the heart,
and then of course,
which
right,
she's doing quite a lot of recently.
Bye-bye.
We see how Phrolova is finally able to move from Purgatory and go, metaphorically, to paradise.
So I guess this is the thing. I was of the headcanon that, like, the dream beyond this area that Phrolova went to was actually the Purgatory. But in reality, existence, her life on Earth, or Solaris 3, was the real Purgatory for her. And now that she's gone ahead and she's been able to move to the next area with the help of Rover, I think she's actually functionally in her own version of heaven. So you remember how I said at the start, I thought she was making heaven over here? Maybe I wasn't wrong. Yeah, she's half a TD too. Half a TD living in the real world.
In the final scene of her death, Phrolova and the lost souls of her village pass into the lost beyond through what seems to be a broken painting or a door. Though this is a little suspect, I believe that this is a parallel to Dante's multifoliate, or Divine Rose. In his Divine Comedy, this supposed rose is a scene that grants him at the end of his journey in Paradiso, at the Empyrean, otherwise known as a final stage of heaven. In essence, what this rose symbolically represents is the ultimate heaven, or the ultimate final paradise. However, in Dante's version, the Divine Rose is made up of a procession of angels, while Phrolova's entrance to the Lost Beyond mirrors it in shape but is made of broken glass. My theory for this is that because the Lost Beyond is incomplete, as, in the end, Phrolova was never able to secure the gem, it means that instead of making the Lost Beyond a reality, she merged with it instead, making it essentially an unfinished world. Alternatively, you can also see that the broken glass of the door represents a sort of falsity, an illusion, essentially. While Dante's Divine Rose is made up of angels, Phrolova's Lost Beyond is inhabited by the villagers, who may be a world of fake or false angels, but angels nevertheless. Phrolova has stated multiple times through the story that she does not care if her reality is an illusion, only that she can see those she lost once again. Regardless, no matter how we see this door, or how false we deem her supposed paradise to be, and no matter how much Rover deems her insane and irrational, the one truth that remains is that the Lost Beyond remains as Phrolova's Empyrean, her sacred place, and her highest heaven.
True, and I think the main thing is, I think intentionally, right? We don't see a single malicious person in this Beyond. You look at all of the characterization of its inhabitants, you think about the Trisses, you think about, like, the old lady, you think about the old lady's husband, every other side character. The best definition is it's like, they're all, like, good people. There doesn't seem to be any negative qualities about any person living there, right? Which is kind of, like, juxtaposed to this idea that TDs are made out of negative emotions and negative frequencies. But the only thing that you see in any of the conversations and interactions are positive emotions in that region. So it's like, it's an interesting juxtaposition to the underlying lore of the game. And that's what makes me think that this whole area over here, when he's saying it's incomplete, I literally think this is going to be like the depository zone for maybe like some characters that could actually die in the story. This actually could turn into Kuro's version of like the afterlife, and it could mean that they're okay to like kill some playable characters for the progression of the plot.
When you enter the Lost Beyond after...
Or maybe for those that are corrupted, right? Those that got corrupted by like negative frequencies, maybe you only see the good parts of them, right? In this area, and then these are the ones that become like playable. Maybe Phrolova's Lost Beyond is how you can like convert Fractsidus members, Thernodian Resonators, Geshu Lins. It's how you can convert them into playable units. Because maybe this only captures the positive frequencies and then gets rid of all the bad shit that turned them bad in the first place.
the story's conclusion, you'll be greeted with an achievement that reads, Il aurait suffi. It would have been enough.
Wait, what happens for you to get that?
You'll be greeted with an achievement that reads, Il aurait suffi. It would have been enough.
After the story's conclusion, you get this. Okay. Or after you enter. Gotcha. Wait, that is after the story's conclusion.
Phrolova's name has a lot of ways of being understood, but my leading theory so far, and take this of course with a grain of salt, is that her name is Russian for the wise man. Frol meaning wise man, and Ova being a female suffix. Considering that at this point, I'm almost certain that someone at Kuro Games is a T.S. Eliot fan, my interpretation of this is that Phrolova's name is a reference to another one of his poems, specifically The Journey of the Magi, written in 1927. The Journey of the Magi tells the story of the Magi, the
Fucking nerd.
three wise men who followed the star of Bethlehem to the birth of Jesus. In this poem, Eliot uses his Christian mythos as a metaphor for the journey of self-discovery. When the Magi witness the birth of Jesus Christ, the transformative nature of the experience causes them to feel both disillusionment at what they once believed in, as well as rebirth as they find a new purpose. This
Self-discovery and rebirth. He might be cooking here a little bit, boys. Oh, he might be cooking a little bit.
fits perfectly within Phrolova's story after she met pre-wipe Rover for the first time. Although she presents the story in fragments, we know enough to infer that she felt betrayed after Rover failed to keep their promise, fueling her disillusionment long enough to join the Fractsidus to find new meaning and purpose. Phrolova's new path in the Fractsidus in the absence of Rover fulfilling her promise is a parallel of the Magi.
Rover is Jesus? Guys, I think this kind of means that Phrolova's actually Jesus. Think about it this way. She had one rebirth. Wait, Jesus isn't the one that got rebirthed multiple times, right? Is there another figure that got rebirthed multiple times? Yeah, wait, I'm getting my religion wrong. That's like the one thing I shouldn't get wrong. I think the thing with Phrolova is that she has multiple rebirths. She had one rebirth after she died. Literally, right? Where she awakened her forte. Then she got another rebirth after she met Rover. Then she had another rebirth where she met Fractsidus. And now she's having a fourth rebirth after Rover comes back again. She's been rebirthed at least 4 times, to be honest.
Or the wise men in Eliot's poem. Instead of clinging to emotion and what she once knew of old, she's instead transitioned to a new, cold efficiency to fulfill her goals.
What you and your cronies hold dear is but a jest to the Fractsidus. No bond lasts forever. Without true loyalties, there can be no betrayal, no deceit.
I don't think her meeting Fractsidus is a rebirth. I kind of view it. It's like her turning a little bad, getting a little evil.
Buy into such illusions.
I don't think she was willing to summon TDs to go kill people before she met Fractsidus, to be honest. When you think about the type of character that Phrolova was, she's going ahead playing violin with a bunch of kids, living with like an old family. Her biggest regret is not being able to say sorry to her mother. Yeah, that doesn't seem... It seems like you would have to go through like almost a rebirth to be turned into somebody that's willing to commit mass genocide. Just saying. Just saying. Now we got the fun part. All right, Marco, get ready, buddy. This one's for you, baby.
One of the key aspects of Phrolova's story, as well as her skills and kit, is the use of musical symbolism. Most of Phrolova's skills tie musical themes into the overarching symbols we've already talked about.
I mean, and the theme of Wuthering Waves as a whole is just straight up music related, right? It's called concerto skills, right? It's called fucking concerto skills.
Before we talk about some of these themes, however, we need to understand some terminology. Firstly, an Italian overture is a free movement orchestra used as an opening to an opera, and it always follows a fast, slow, fast format.
Okay.
A movement is just a self-contained piece of a symphony, sort of like a chapter in a book. A sonata is also a free movement piece, but is generally written for a single instrument, almost always being a piano, but sometimes also for the violin. It is generally used as the opening movement to a symphony. A rhapsody is a piece generally characterized by its lack of formalized structure. They change tempo, mood, and theme throughout the piece. A waltz is a piece of music always written in triple time and meant to be danced to in a pair with the rhythm. Dance for a waltz is always danced in a circular pattern around a dance floor.
How many of you guys just learned something new? Hey, don't lie. Don't be shy. How many of you guys just learned something new? Raise your hands. Raise your hands. Come on, guys. I want to see everybody's hands raised. There's no way you motherfuckers knew any of this shit prior. Who said that games are bad for you? Who said that games make you dumber? Games make you smarter, guys. Because you guys are so interested. You guys liked version 2.5 so much that you were willing to sit here and absorb knowledge about fucking musical notes and their compositions, and are educating yourselves now on this matter so that you can further understand even more of the story. Man, games are good, guys. Games are good.
If we look at the Phrolova's skills and kits, we can see how these concepts actually tend to work together. Her basic attacks are called the movement of life and death, and consist of 3 attacks which represent the free movements within the sonata.
Is bro gonna get into a fucking kit breakdown? Oh god.
You can interpret, for example, that the first attack is the beginning of life, the second, the journey, and the third attack being death itself. Her basic attacks lead into a forte circuit called Rhapsody of a New World. You can build her forte circuit in a few different ways. If you only use basic attacks, you will get a red note, which gives Phrolova a damage multiplier. If you use her resonance skill, it groups the enemies, and if you use both in quick succession, you get a shiny bold note, which gives both buffs.
Okay, he's technically wrong. It's after you use an echo skill or an intro skill that you get the mixed notes. So I'm sure what he's saying still makes sense here.
This is symbolic of a rhapsody, which itself is built in distinct ways.
Okay, his point still stands. He's just wrong about how you get the mixed note. But a rhapsody, right, by his own definition, is a bunch of notes still put together intentionally, but they don't seem to have a prescribed order, which is literally how our forte circuit works. You can have a fucking permutation of different combinations of how the notes are actually ordered and still get the ability off and make it function.
With each note representing its own theme. Finally, after the forte circuit, you unlock her ultimate, named Waltz of Forsaken Deaths. Phrolova's ult has her jump into the air and have Hecate dance with the opponents.
And a waltz is something that you dance in a pair with. Hey, one thing you can say about Kuro Games is that their translations in other languages might be a little bit loosey-goosey or not the best, but their translations to English are pretty fucking spot on.
Which mirrors how a waltz is supposed to be danced in a pair. Hecate will perform 2 basic attacks and...
Okay, you guys might get mad at me for my pronunciation, but hecate sounds way fucking better than Hecate. Hecate sounds like a slur.
Third will be replaced with an enhanced basic, thus representing the triple time of the waltz and her dancing within rhythm to the music. This would then complete her rotation. At this point, it's important for us to go back to the Italian overture, and it is important as well to remember that it is an opening piece to an opera, not a whole, meaning that it is a sort of introduction that sets the themes for the story to come. This leads into the name of Phrolova's outro skill, aptly being named Unfinished Piece. Much like how an Italian overture was meant to be an introduction and not a complete story, it mirrors her journey and the lost beyond itself. As we talked about previously in the section about the broken glass door and the divine rose, Phrolova was not able to get the gem and make the lost beyond a reality. Her heaven and her journey is essentially incomplete. Additionally, in her story soundtrack, The Lost Beyond, Many of the previous symbols we talked about also tie together quite nicely.
So her story ties into her skill names in the description. I'm gonna be real, somebody at Kuro Games actually put a lot of thought into just what the fucking abilities are called. I feel like you have to implicitly know nobody's gonna care like that much. One of Mortife's moves is literally called like Fury Fudge. It was really called Fury Fudge for the longest time, but like now they're carrying a lot more.
Phrolova makes constant reference to the reverie, otherwise known as a fleeting or forgetful daydream, with her merging with the lost beyond being the final piece to fall into place. In the second stanza, we can see the yearning that she holds for this illusion, even if it is false and perfumed. We've already established that Phrolova knows and doesn't care if her paradise is an illusion, which shows that she holds on to feelings and memories even if the people that inhabited them are long dead. The final musical reference.
She holds on to feelings and memories even if the ones that inhabited them are long dead, and she can make them real. Bro, I'm telling you, she sounds strong enough to make dead people playable again. Otherwise, how is she playable? I think that there was like some discovery that people made after a conversation with her in the lore. Her like resonance ability allows her to materialize in the real world momentarily, and that's why she's playable. Even though her physical body isn't there, she can actually like almost, I guess, like remote control it into the real world and still do stuff. And I'm pretty sure she's functionally immortal in this state as long as like that painting frame to the Lost Beyond is like still there. I think we're gonna see some playable units inhabiting that area. I'm not joking. I really do think it's gonna happen. How based would it be if we go on like some sort of mission with Phrolova to like collect Thornodian resonators, like the fucking Infinity Stones? We get Geshu-Lin, right? We go on an adventure. We get Geshu-Lin. We bring him back to the Dream Beyond. And then we find out Jian's about to die. And then purified Geshu-Lin goes to save him. How wild would that be in the lore? How wild would that be in the lore for that to happen? And it's almost like the opposite scene of Jian's character trailer. They have laid such a firm foundation for the future storytelling, and they have tied up so many of like the existing almost like plot holes that I feel like have kind of been floating around in the air since 1.0, but now the possibilities literally seem limitless. The headcanon is crazy. Guys, you know what I'm saying makes sense.
This will cover is a signature weapon called the Lethean elegy. An elegy is a poem or song that laments the dead, which is why when Phrolova performs it, she's clad in black. The understanding of Lethean, which connotes forgetfulness, comes from the river Leth, which is one of the 5 rivers of the Greek underworld.
Okay, this one is pretty on the nose. Her weapon is just her simping over Rover. Yeah, the name of her weapon is just her being a simp.
The river, which would wipe the memories of anyone who drank from it, parallels to Rover, who lost their memories voluntarily, as well as the erosion of memory within Phrolova's eternal paradise, where the sun never sets. The river
I told you, it was just her simping.
Leth is also the final river to cross before his soul is reincarnated, which matches with Phrolova in the update 2.0.
Even more! It's in fucking Dante's Inferno too!
5 story, being essentially at the end of the journey through.
Okay, I'm pretty sure the name of the weapon is like indisputable proof that Phrolova is supposed to be Dante. I think it is indisputable proof. I don't think that there's any way that anyone can deny it when it's like when the reference is like this spot on to the fucking name of the river. I don't think anyone can get close to even denying it. Yeah.
Purgatory.
And this is the part over here that I'm pretty interested in, because one thing that I actually found kind of significantly lacking in the 2.5 quest that, honestly, I didn't really think it needed to be explained that much, but it would have been like a nice to have in the 2.5 quest was more of a breakdown of Hecate. I feel like I didn't, maybe I like missed something in the quest, but I feel like I didn't like get that much of like a, I feel like I wanted more.
That's the key echo that matches Phrolova's theme, and the one she used in combat for basically half her attacks. It is inevitable that Hecate also plays a big part in her symbolism. Hecate, a goddess in Greek mythology, is a bit of an enigma, because she is perhaps one of the only powerful major goddesses of the Greek pantheon, where no one can actually agree on what exactly she represents.
What? Y'all had 4,000 years and you couldn't figure out what she does? She was made in like 3000 BC, bro. What do you mean you don't know what she does? You guys had literally multiple millennia to figure it out. Get your fucking shit together.
Says it does. However, there are still some general things that most people agree on when it comes to Hecate. First off, Hecate is often associated with magic and witchcraft.
Okay.
For instance, if you ever did Macbeth in high school, for example, you would know that Hecate is a leader of the Three Witches. Phrolova's use of a wand and her resident abilities in controlling TDs can be effectively interpreted as a source of magic and witchcraft.
Yeah.
Secondly, and this is probably the most important, is that Hecate is a goddess that governs over liminal spaces and crossroads. Essentially, she controls boundaries in between things, such
That's a pretty appropriate name for the fucking realm walker that Phrolova is.
as, in the case of Phrolova, the boundary between life and death. The reason this is important is that Purgatory, as we discussed previously, is also a liminal concept that Hecate essentially controls.
One thing that I find really interesting about this video is that the sequence of it really does build upon every single example that it shows to, like, understand and, like, you know, have more significance from what's at the end of this video. You gotta actually have listened to, like, these initial parts, right? And I feel like for those of us that have been here for the entire ride, it's like every other point is, like, making more and more sense. It is like an enclosed story. Yeah, this is like, it's like sequence nodes. Yeah, we're at S6 right now. Or we're at S5, we're about to go to S6.
Being a boundary that exists between the death and the afterlife. Phrolova, like Hecate, always lives an existence in between or on the edge of things. Thirdly, Hecate, as a goddess of liminal spaces and boundaries, is also often depicted as guiding souls to the afterlife, with some versions showing her with necromantic powers.
Alright, well, that's pretty cut and paste.
This mirrors Phrolova's attempts at controlling life and death, with her vision of resurrecting the villagers being able to be interpreted as essentially a form of necromancy, in her attempt to make an eternal purgatory to reverse death itself. Phrolova essentially takes on a god-like ambition. However, like Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, Phrolova is essentially punished for her hubris, as she fails to acquire the gem, and her vision of the lost beyond remains broken and incomplete.
Did she fail, or is there going to be a part 2? I genuinely think that this is probably what's going to happen, and maybe there's a big spoiler. Phrolova's going to come back, Rover's going to get the gem back from Fraxidus, and the gem will end up with Phrolova. And that's where we're going to have, like, some sort of expansion. Guys, if you're familiar with Honkai Impact 3rd, I feel like Phrolova's going to make an Elysian realm. The Elysian realm in Honkai Impact 3rd is basically where you can, like, relive, re-experience past stories of people that died in the story. And it's, like, curated by, like, one person. I feel like Phrolova's gonna get the gem, and it's gonna come with some sort of, like, Elysian realm-esque expansion. That's what I think is going to occur. I might be confident enough to put money on it, because I'm going to be real, I don't think Rover has anything they can do with the gem. I think the gem is useless for Rover. I think Phrolova is the only person that can actually do something with it, and the amount of plot points and potential that she has with the power of the gem is too high to not continue looking at it. Otherwise, guys, why else would it be marked off in the overworld as, like, a kind of important location? If it was as minor as it is right now, it wouldn't be marked off as, like, a portal on your minimap. It wouldn't be marked as, like, a notable item on your minimap. Why would it be marked off like this with, like, a specific icon if you're not supposed to ever go back there or do anything with it? Right now, functionally, in this update, all it does is it has Ascension materials. All it has is Ascension materials, and it's got, like, this bright-ass, like, fucking marker, this old-ass thing. Whenever you return, you'll hear joyful laughter of rebirth, as if this land still holds the promise of eternity. If this ain't foreshadowing, there's even more. I'll read it out loud. The beyond, that promised perfection, is no more in this world, at least for now. They're doing something with this place. And I think the framing in this video has made it much more clear what is going to happen here.
In your warm embrace, I'll trade anything.
To finish off the video, we will make one final but important stop of one of the major symbols behind Phrolova's story and character, the spider lily, or otherwise known, the licorice flower.
Bro, this thing got spammed like crazy.
Licorice,
He better
a
be
Greek
spitting.
word meaning twilight, is in itself also a liminal concept, like Purgatory. Like how twilight borders both day and night, the spider lily is both a symbol of beauty and death, a paradoxical contrast that is basically molded into Phrolova's story and design. When we see how the flower is incorporated into her weapon, the Lethean elegy, for instance, we can relate how the spider lily symbolizes death and passing, often growing near graveyards and believed to mark the path to the afterlife, hence the elegy. The licorice flower is also special in that it only blooms for a couple of days before wilting. This temporary beauty is a painful symbolism, especially because Phrolova's entire goal is to turn a temporary moment of purgatory, being that of her village, into what is an eternal paradise. Like the spider lily, her attempts are ultimately futile as she fails in an attempt to resurrect the villagers, only coming home when she dies and joins them.
Almost like how death was something that's supposed to happen. Much like how licorices are supposed to die. You can't really change that. No matter what you do, that licorice is going to wilt and die. Phrolova was supposed to die as well. Much like how she was supposed to die with her village back then. But then has kind of just been like grinding. Somehow ever since to just keep going. Not gonna lie, I feel like bro ended up cooking exceptionally hard just based off of the symbolism. And ironically enough, despite him skipping the 1.0 stuff and not actually talking about it, I think that he actually kept the discussion limited enough to the actual material in the 2.5 quest that I don't think that him not fully comprehending, or at least not displaying full comprehension of the 1.0 materials is as much of a problem. I'm pretty sure he did the research where it was relevant, but he kept the discussion isolated enough.
If you managed to watch the video all the way to the end, thank you. I really appreciate it. There's a lot of small symbolism that I didn't end up putting in. For example, the mention of Ouroboros in the Resonator showcase, and the fact that Phrolova's town is called Ostina when you ask Pia after the story's conclusion. But I decided to make a video on this story and this character, essentially, because it was just so full of symbolism that I couldn't not do so, especially compared to all the characters before it, which did not have this level of sophistication and detail.
Fair. It was really like, you could see the Sydney Mar vids, they were a little bit looser, kind of like more like general overarching themes, but not many as specific examples as were lined up in this quest. I'll just give some overall feedback for this guy, because I think he makes some pretty high quality content, or at least has great points. First point, get a better mic. Second, edit the music better, because whatever was playing like in the Hollow Men section is one of the worst fucking songs I've ever heard. C, choose different music. And D, if you're going to be playing clips from the game, turn off the music. I feel like this type of video, he doesn't probably make them that frequently, but those are just my minor points of feedback that I think would elevate the experience a lot higher. And I think more importantly, right, get a lot more people to view this on like stream and stuff. Because I'm just talking about stuff that's going to make it, you know, the best viewing process to like get it out there, because I think it's a video that's definitely worth watching. And there are some CCs in particular, maybe those that weren't paying as much attention to the story and, you know, got called out by their own communities, that might want to watch a video like this on stream, you know, just to make sure that they're more educated on the matter for future discussions, right? I'm not going to name any names, but you guys can imagine who I'm talking about. Oh, and last thing is, change that Rover name, bro. Land Rover 4x4 is not video friendly. It's not video friendly. That'll be that for this one. As you can tell, bit of a long one, but also a bit of a banger. And hopefully having somebody that is, I'm college educated and I did take a lot of English classes. Hopefully somebody along that vein, along for the ride, helped all those COVID kids who are watching this video too. All right, let me know what you all think. Peace.